Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar from I/O. It's a webinar about customer identity and access management, an important topic, of course, in security. My name is Friso Gerings. I'm a technology director here at I/O. And for today's webinar, we thought as a team who are involved in CIAM, or customer identity and access management, that it would be good to just do a discussion on the latest state of the art. And for this, I'm joined by two of our experts in the field here at I/O. To my left.
Yes, so I'm Daan Beulen. I'm a solution architect at I/O, and I work a lot for financial companies where I deal with their CIAM challenges. And maybe also good to mention is that this webinar will be recorded and distributed after the webinar is ended, so everyone can watch it back, share it, etc.
Yes,
and of course.
Yeah, Mark van der Linden, solution architect, and for the past 10 years, been working for I/O for all of our clients and our customers to help them in their challenges for security and everything, customer identity and access management.
Well, I think together with you, we should be able to cover a lot of ground, and that's also the idea for today. As we have quite a full house in the tool and also a lot of topics to cover, we're asking for questions to be held to the end. Also in the chat, just put them in a little later, and we'll try to handle as many questions as we can as well. First, today's topics. The things that we're going to discuss, you are going to talk us through the current state of customer identity and access management, what's more or less common in well-designed solutions nowadays. Then we're going to have a look at some of the trends that we see. Then next is actually the main topic, the opportunities that AI and AI agents in relation to CIAM are offering, and what that means for all of us and for our clients. But we're also going to focus a bit on the threats that AI impose on us, because we shouldn't ignore that. And I think that's also a key topic, right? So those are the four things that we're going to cover, and then a little bit of a wrap up. But first, I think the current state of CIAM, what does an average CIAM landscape look like? Well, we have a slide to guide us through that a little bit, so maybe it's good to put that on screen, and then I think Mark,
definitely,
if you can talk us through the current state.
Because what you see now on the sheet is, of course, a simplified view on what we think a landscape with customer identity and access management should look like, right? It's definitely more than this, but to keep things a little bit compact, I think the main topics here are important to cover, because what we see in a lot of companies is that it's still not that simple, and it should be, because security should be simple, and you should know what is going on in your landscape. And one of the biggest tips we can give, of course, is keep to the standards. There are reasons why OAuth and OpenID Connect are still the standards today, because they have been made standards so that developers, and also if you want to expose your APIs to your partners, there's an easy way to integrate on a security level. Security should be made simple so that you make less mistakes, and that's exactly what these protocols do. They give you easy ways to integrate in that way. And I think another aspect of a CIAM solution is that you should more or less have a centralized user base. Now, of course, I don't mean that you don't have multiple user bases, because we see that all the time with companies where you have a user base of all your internal employees. They're usually in something like an Entra ID. And maybe your customers, well, you might want to authenticate them via the local government, like something with DigiD. But what I mean with centralized is that you have a main point of contact for all your applications, for your partners to initiate at least the authentication. And that's what you do with the identity provider, or what you call it in this scenario is service provider. The service provider is there for the web application to start that authentication for your customers, for your users. And that's all done with those protocols. And I think the other part which you see on this sheet is that everything is related to eventually getting a token. a JSON Web Token, or JOT, as they
we should pronounce it as JOT, right?
JOT.
That's
Yes.
the hip way to do it.
Indeed. And that's a stateless way of providing, of course, an identity through your landscape, through your architecture, and eventually get to your APIs. Your APIs can then easily validate those tokens, know that they are genuine, and that you're authenticated, and know, okay, well, this user can perform these functionalities and can access specific data.
Yeah.
So I think those are kind of the components that you should have in place, right now in your landscape.
Yeah. So you do, I think, see quite a lot of different, and also on a scale, different solutions that support landscapes like this. Yep. Can you, maybe one of you tell us a little bit about, okay, from the small solutions to the big ones, what's out there in the market?
Yeah, so the smaller ones are, I think, the cloud native ones. So AWS and Azure both have their own solutions. They have Cognito on AWS side, and they have Azure B2C on the Azure side. Those are more entry-level services that, they provide you what you need. They allow you to log in through social providers. They have some out-of-the-box connections. They also allow you to link things through OpenID Connect or OAuth to other identity providers. And they often have some form of two-factor authentication in there as well. But it kind of stops there most of the time. Those are, sort of the smaller things. They're good if you just want to start and have something easy and quickly set up. Depending on where you're hosting, you just pick theirs and you go with it. But there's also, of course, the bigger players. Think Okta with their Okta and Auth0 platforms, but there's also Ping Identity. There are a couple of others, but Okta and Ping Identity are kind of the biggest and the market leaders right now. And what you see is that they're really innovating on things like passwordless, things like step-up authentication, as sort of the newer things that we'll get to in a bit. They can host they're also hosted in the cloud, but they can also do private cloud or on-premise in some cases. And if you really have a big user base, it's always worth it to start looking into those, just because they're way more feature rich. There's a lot better support, but of course, it's a completely different price tag as well compared to the cloud native simple solutions.
Yeah, and that's, I think, often the case with these types of solutions, right? Pick the right one, but also consider pricing and make sure that you understand the pricing model, because that's an important thing. I think some of these bigger solutions also support older solutions still, Mark. Do you still see a need for that?
I do, because we work with a lot of financial institutions, insurance companies, and we still see that they still have a lot of older back offices that need support, and where you still see that part of their user base is still available, and migrations can take some time. So to have support for things like SAML, the older kind of protocols that are still valid in their own way, but not for the outside world, right? And we want to keep those things internally. And with these products, you don't have all the headache of taking care of keeping that secure. They have out-of-the-box solutions for that to connect those, but then to the outside, to your partners, to your own applications, you keep that strict OpenID Connect or OAuth as a protocol, and everything behind it. Well, your application shouldn't care about that. That's kind of the main part. And I think what we're also trying to say here, I think, is that don't build these things yourself. There are big players out there that really only focus on these types of things. They're complex. They always need to be up to date, secure on day one. So really look into those solutions. I think is.
And what is also really nice about those solutions, especially for the older platforms, is that they often have some sort of like marketplace with like all the big platforms. They're in there, they have a direct integration, and they maintain like all the small nuances that some of these things have. Like sometimes something big has like SharePoint, for example, maybe a better example, but they're based on a standard, the way that you can provide the credentials, but they have these small intricacies, or sometimes I've seen things where they have an implementation mistake compared to the specification actually. And if you use one of those plugins from the marketplace from those big players, that is all taken care of as well.
I think this taking care of the fact that you have a composable landscape and that your CIAM solution is able to integrate into that's important, right? Because we see much more architectures that are decoupled, decentralized. Composable is, of course, the word around these types of things. So CIAM is, in a way, CIAM is going in that direction as well, right?
And it should, because I think also it makes it a lot easier to comply to all the rules that are coming up, right? Compliancy is a big thing, auditing is a big thing. And I think having that centralized in that product just makes it a lot easier to at least facilitate the way of who accesses what and things like that. And you don't want that spread around your whole architecture. So
Okay, I think that kind of sets the current scene, right? Let's dive into some of the trends as we promised. We will get to the big thing, which is of course the hipness of AI and large language models and agents and everything around that. But bear with us for a second, because there are some other things. You talked a lot actually about passwordless, also at big international events. There are other things there as well. What trends do you want to pick out, the two of you? What should we be aware of that's happening in CIAM?
Yeah, you want to start this one? Or?
Yeah, I think next to passwordless, one of the things that you're seeing is the conditional multi-factor authentication or strong authentication things, where people find things like two-factor authentication annoying. Understandably.
Definitely.
But so what is happening now is this movement where, okay, if you've already logged into this device, we know the device. We know the IP address, we know the browser matches up with what you usually do, we know the location matches up with what you usually do, then maybe you don't have to do two-factor authentication again. Instead, you just log in with your regular password or your passkey, depending on if you're password or passwordless. But there are maybe some operations that are quite sensitive, where you then want to do this step up. So, okay, I know that this user has logged in without their second factor this time, but now they're trying to transfer a large sum of money. So maybe we should ask them for the second factor again. You see this coming up a lot more, and they're also using with regards to asking for the second factor on login, they're using smart things like they're determining if you've been doing unrealistic travel, for example, like maybe you are on the same device, but you're randomly in a different country, in a very fast, like way too fast. So for example, if I'm in the Netherlands now, but in an hour I'm in Japan, that's probably not possible. So maybe there you want to do a step up as well. And with AI, this is of course becoming more machine learning, but this is more becoming better and better as well. So I think that's one of the big trends that's happening that the big players in the market are supporting nowadays and are improving on.
So in a way, we could say, I think that the big players, next to the fact that we want to be able to connect AI and we see threats for AI, but internally they are also more and more depending on AI and rules to do less annoying things.
They're doing two things, right? So they're using AI to improve their own flows, the login flows, registration flows, etc. But they're also thinking about AI as in, and I guess that's what we'll get to later as well. How can we make AI as in chatbots more secure when they need to access certain data that should be secured? That's the other thing that they are working on.
Cool. And around passwordless, from the passwordless evangelist of I/O, Mark?
I've been talking about this for, I think, already 3 years. And what I've really seen is that the big players have implemented it all, and all the browsers nowadays support it. So there's actually no reason anymore for the general public to not use it because of technical reasons. But there's still a mindset, I think, among people. Is this secure? Because I don't have a password anymore. And it is strange. And I think that's also why we do these things, right? To tell people how it works. And, but I do think what also helps is that these big players, they make it so easy to enable it. It's usually just a checkbox. You have it enabled in your flow. And I think one of the things is also that I'm always trying to say, well, don't force it on people yet. Make it conditional. And we've seen, I think, over the past 10 years also, those one-time passwords that we hate, those have become more regular as well, and more easy to use as well with password managers and maybe even push notifications on your phone, right? So those have evolved, and they've kind of became in the bigger apps, the more risk level apps have become quite required these days. That was not the case 10 years ago. So I think with passwordless, we'll see that more, and especially with AI. But I think that's something we'll get to later on why passwordless is going to help there. But maybe just a quick overview of what passwordless is. It's indeed an authentication method to log in without a password, and it works on public key cryptography. So that means that you create a payload that you sign with a private key, just like you do with certificates, with job tokens.
Yep.
It's the same concept actually. But the thing is that the private key stays on the device of the user. So we're not sending over private keys anymore to servers, which is a big gain, because with passwords we're actually sending our key over to the server, and we just expect those servers to keep it safe, those companies. But if you don't send over your private key, there's nothing to steal.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of passwordless.
So sometimes consumers or the general public is afraid of it, but in a way, we should definitely not be afraid of it, because it's actually much better than using and setting out passwords. I think that's a good thing. I think the last thing I maybe want to add to that is that we have been talking in the industry and also in marketing about hyper-personalization.
Yeah.
I sometimes also compare the way that these bigger CIAM solutions, like indeed Okta or Ping, are using all of this profiling data, and yes, it's passwordless or it's not passwordless, into some form of hyper-personalization of your login experience. It's just enough security for you at that specific point in time, right?
Yeah.
So it would be good, of course, if we get annoyed as less as possible by solutions like this. Maybe it's a good time to actually dive into the buzzword section of our talk today. Artificial intelligence, AI agents, large language models. I think, we don't have to introduce that. Everyone also in our audience has probably been using ChatGPT or models from other providers. But there are two key things, I think maybe two key concept names that we really want to explain. And that's important, I think, for this webinar to spend some time on that. The scenario is agents and AI agents. Agents are simple pieces of AI that are going to do work for you. But for example, I could use a Booking.com agent to find just the right holiday home for me, for example. But then Booking.com might need to dive into a lot of different systems to find the perfect holiday room. And that's a big trend currently in AI, right? Building these types of agents and creating agents. Agentic AI, I think, is the term around that. And the industry, the AI industry, but also the CIAM industry, are currently, I think, kind of balancing on two different ways of how to approach security and sign-ons around AI agents, or these little mini programs that are doing tasks for us. Maybe it's good to put them on the screen, and then I can quickly name them, and you can explain us what they are, what the differences are. Definitely. The first one is computer using agents, and the second one is the model context protocol. Those are two important words, and we want our audience to understand them. So I'd say take a bit of time to introduce them.
Maybe I can start, and then you can go into more of the details. Computer using agents is actually what ChatGPT OpenAI uses. And it's quite simple actually, because underneath it just uses a sandbox browser to do those things that the agent wants to do to get this information, right? And it's pretty straightforward, but it has a lot of limitations because it's in the sandbox. It usually only can get to public data, public available data.
But just for the full understanding, you say a sandbox. So the AI agent in this case of computer using agents is just doing the same that I, as a regular user, would do in the browser, right? But then just in a sandbox headless browser.
Exactly.
That's important to understand.
That's a good addition to that. But of course, what we see there is that it's public data. So yes, there's of course a lot of public data all over the internet, also probably of us. But if you really want to personalize things, then you're already looking at, okay, well, I want to log in somewhere, and I want to be able to really get my preferences into the equation. And I think that's where the model context protocol will come into play more and more, because there you can actually go with API-based queries where you can say, okay, this agent, go fetch me data from all of these APIs, where you can give the context of that user, and in that way include that into eventually your result. So that's where you see the main differences, and they both have their pros and cons. But I think Dan, you can probably go a bit more into detail on what these can bring to us as an end user.
Okay, so Dan, I think you're going to start on computer using agents. Maybe you should put the CUI slide on screen then, so that we can explain that concept a bit.
Yeah, because I think it's important to also in a bit more detail explain how both these protocols actually work. So starting with computer using agents, so we're assuming here that we're in a chatbot talking to an LLM. And with computer using agents, you can do something. You can ask something like, "Hey, can you look up a nice place for me in Spain to go on holiday, for example?" And then what the OpenAI model would do is it would recognize, okay, I need to look up a vacation holiday. Maybe I'll go to Booking.com. And it will perform a call on the back to start up a headless browser in a sandbox mode where it will go to Booking.com. It will understand, okay, there's a search bar on Booking.com, so I need to look up for a holiday location in Spain there. So in the back, it will fill that in. It will search. That's the action that's being performed at point 5. Then it will see the results, and it will take a screenshot of that. And then that screenshot is being read by the AI, by the LLM model again, fed back, and then it can say, "Oh, okay, I see on Booking.com that this amazing apartment is available for 80 euros per night. Do you want to book it?" And then the "do you want to book it" part becomes difficult, because if you want to book it as Friso, then you probably need to be in your Booking.com account.
Exactly, that's the difficult part. Here CIAM comes into play, right?
That's indeed the difficult part. Where with the current way the CUA is working, is you would need to somehow give the sandbox browser your credentials to log in. That can be via chat, but that seems very unsafe. And they're thinking about ways where they temporarily pause the browser, the headless browser, and give it to you so you can fill it in the browser on the actual Booking.com. But it's a bit awkward. Yeah. Long story short, that's how computer using agents work. I think this is great for accessing public data, or saying, okay, I want to know more about IO, for example. So can you look up some stuff about on iodigital.com and tell me what this company is about and what they do? Yeah. But when you actually have to start getting to personal data and logging in, it becomes more difficult, and it's not really solved yet. Yeah. On the other hand, or do you?
No. I was going to say, so in a way, OpenAI and ChatGPT, they kind of believe in this model, or it's the way that they are focusing on a lot. But there are these pitfalls.
This is the way that they're going right now. But to be honest, this is constantly changing, and maybe they will switch. I'm not sure. We'll have to see what the future holds there. Yeah. The alternative to the computer using agents, of course, is the model context protocol, which is from Anthropic. It's from the developers of Claude. Maybe people know that one better. It's another very well-known, very big LLM model used a lot by developers. It's actually really good at coding, I think, better than ChatGPT. And they have come up with a protocol to solve this differently, which is the MCP protocol. And we also have a slide for that one. To explain how it works. So let's put the MCP slide on the screen. The start is the same. You have a user on a chat model, and it says, "Hey, I want to book something on Booking.com." The MCP client will recognize again that needs to do something with Booking.com, and it will have a tool linked to it that knows it. Well, that basically specifies that, hey, I'm a tool. I can do things with Booking.com. Yeah. That's based on an API definition that you can that is part of the protocol. I won't go into too much details there. Then what the MCP client will do is it will do a call to that tool with the data that it has taken from the chat prompt, and then the MCP server, which is what is hosting the tool, which is what it actually has the code to go do things with Booking.com. Will then perform an action, which is usually an API call to Booking.com or something else. So it will just do an API call, a response will come, and that data out of that response, that will be sent back to the MCP client, and then it can take that into the LLM model to talk about it again. The advantage here is that you're doing a lot of API-based operations. Yeah. So it's possible to include job tokens in those calls from the MCP client to the MCP server, and then the MCP server can take it again to Booking.com and basically have your JOT token there.
Yeah.
So
I
you
think
don't have to log in.
we're going to explain that how that flow could work a little later,
That's
right?
true. There is a sequence diagram for that as well.
Yeah. So maybe quickly summarizing, and then do add anything else that you want to add about MCP. It is in a way, or at least I understand it to be as let's say a description of a service that I am providing to an AI agent or to a large language model, right? So even if we're in a non-authenticated situation, if I'm, for example, weather.com, I could create an MCP server that says, well, if you give me a city, I give you back 9 days of weather forecasts in this format. That's more or less what MCP does.
It works in both cases.
It works in both cases. But the smart and the magic here, and I think we've been talking about, it is in a way still somewhat magic, is how these large language models at a certain point in their flow know that they can call a specific MCP agent.
It is really magic. And if you're coding this, basically what you're doing is, I'm from a Java background and I've created a server to play around. But basically what you do in the code is you just put an annotation, add tool, and then you type some text of what it does. And then the LLM interprets that text. And then based on what you've written there, it can also recognize that if you ask some prompt that matches that tool, and then I need to go call it. But how that part works, that I don't know. That's LLM magic.
Yeah. So in the vision where, let's say, 70% of our online work in the future will be done by AI agents, it will be super important to create good MCP-based descriptions of what you are offering.
I think so too. Yeah. But for me, the main advantage that MCP has over computer using agents is that you can include tokens. And especially if you're building, for example, like chat clients on a website or for a bank or whatever, like you have it on your customer portal. You can have a chat client there and you're already logged in. So you already have the token. So anything that you can see in the customer portal, you can include that token into the MCP client. And then it can also basically access all the data that you can in your customer portal just through tools. And it can do anything that you can do in a customer portal as long as you provided the tools in a safe way, which is really cool.
Do we want to quickly run through the sequence?
Yeah, we can quickly run through the sequence.
Let's put the MCP and CIAM slide on because it's a CIAM webinar, of course.
Exactly,
so we should focus on that.
Exactly, this one. So if you look at how authentication work in MCP, it's basically, as we said, you can include a token. So basically, you start with a request to the MCP server. If you're not authorized, it will tell you you're not authorized, and it will ask you like, okay, hey, can you please go log in? And that uses the OAuth authorization code flow. So where you will get redirected to the actual identity provider where you log in, with your username and password. But this is at the identity provider where you would always log in. Then you get go through the rest of the flow. You get a JOT, an access token. And then that token from then onwards will be included to the MCP server, and they can then do things with that access token. So typically it would be forwarding it to other services, but if you are directly accessing things from the tool, then sure, you can check the rules, check who the user is, whose data you're supposed to give.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I think that's important point. What is a little sidestep here, but we've been discussing it as well, is fine-grained authorization.
Yeah.
A lot of the bigger CIAM players are focusing a lot on making it easy to do fine-grained authorization, which put simply just means you can know my name, but you can't know my phone number, or maybe you can know my phone number, but you can't see my latest 10 transactions, for example, because that's super private.
Yeah.
Fine-grained authorization in combination with AI and MCP, is it becoming even more important now, or is it more or less the same with web UIs?
I think it's becoming even more important because what you see is that, and I think that we'll come back to that when we're going into more of the risks. But there's of course more ways to interact with these chatbots. For instance, you can give prompts, and you can easily just persuade an AI to say, "Hey, get me all the information of this person." And I think that's where fine-grained authorization comes in, because if your API is never going to give that information, that AI is also not going to get it.
Yeah,
and I think that's really important here, and that's why we also show you all of why it's important to have the basics ready.
Yeah.
It's because AI is just going to plug in as an additional client.
Yeah.
Just like we have our web applications where we at some point got mobile applications. Now we're going to have AI agents on top of that to also make sure that they only get the information that they're supposed to get.
Yeah.
And with fine-grained authorization, of course, you can really, as the word says, you can make it very fine-grained on what exactly can this AI agent get to. Yeah. And I think that's going to be more and more important because if you give it some information it shouldn't, it can get to unwanted results, it can get to data leaks, all kinds of things.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest risks, of course, is that if you do not have this sort of fine-grained authorization in place, right? You still want to offer this. You're rushing things, and then you give this LLM model way too much context, and you can try to prompt it all you want. You can always break these prompts. It's the same thing with the current LLMs with ChatGPT, where it's obviously not allowed to answer certain questions, but there are just prompts on the internet that break that, as you can say, and break that. So you have to make sure that if you're dealing with customer data in an LLM or in a chatbot or in an agent, that you make sure that it only has access. The LLM context model only gets access to the data of the current consumer. Yeah. Don't try to fix this with prompts. You have to fix this with CIAM.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. It's very similar in a way, and I know that we're already kind of like diving into the risk part of our CIAM webinar, of course, but it's in a way, I think, similar to what we at I/O also get told from all the front-end mobile and web front-end developers, right? Never, ever trust the front end. They do their best. They can secure things, but it's just the front end talking to your services, and whether it's a REST API or an MCP API, make sure that on the server you don't expose information that shouldn't be read by the front end. So fine-grained authorization is super important there.
Yeah, it's the only place where you have control, right?
Yeah, we also have a small picture on fine-grained authorization.
Yeah, we already showed it earlier, actually.
Oh, we already showed it. Okay, okay, let's. I think we've covered enough ground there. Then
I think so. Yeah.
Let's go into the rest of the risks, because we've seen a lot of opportunities now. AI agents. We can start doing CIAM properly. By the way, maybe last thing to mention about that is that some of the things that you just explained are super recent and only were formalized in March.
Yeah, I think the actual authorization, the way of doing authentication authorization in MCP was in the last update of spec, which was the end of March, I think. Yeah, we're talking like a month ago, 2 months ago.
So really, to our dear audience, we are on top of things today in this webinar. Okay, maybe into other risks. AI, it's nice, it's great, it's the future, it's the promise, but there are big risks associated.
Yeah, and I think we're going into a bit of a different gear. So we've already mentioned the risk that, maybe you give too much context to your LLM model and you start leaking your data. That's of course a risk. But there are also other risks, which is basically is that AI is enhancing the existing methods of stealing passwords or phishing. Yeah. Because, like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, when you would get a phishing email, it would be most of the times quite obvious because the spelling would be bad, the grammar would be bad, and there would be quite some tells just on the structure and the formatting and the language in those emails. But now you have these LLMs that are widely available, they're free, and they're really good at languages and language structures. So they can help you by generating a good phishing email that looks a lot more real than most of the ones that are being done by humans over time, and they do it faster. A second thing that they can do is also they can help you with more targeted phishing, or it's called spear phishing, where you're really targeting one person. Where before you would have to find a lot of social media information about this person, build up a profile. You have to do this all manually, and then based on that profile, you could write a custom tailored email. Now AI can actually do this for you, and this is in fact something that has already been researched back in 2021 at a Black Hat event by the Singaporean government, I think, where they use GPT-3. We're now on 4.5, I think. So it's a lot older model to basically automate all this process. So what they did is they used a service, Humantic, I think, which can build a profile of someone using LLMs. And you just give them the LinkedIn and some other public data that you have, and then they tell you, okay, this is the profile, this is what this person is sensitive for, etc. Then they fed that into GPT-3 to say, okay, can you make a phishing email? I don't know exactly what that prompt was, but they used GPT-3 to create a phishing mail, and then they sent that out. And then they did the same thing with themselves as humans, and the rates of success are actually quite different. Whereas with the AI generated one with GPT-3, 5 out of the 25 emails that they sent were clicked on, and I think 4 of those actually people filled in things on that website as well. Whereas with the human created one, no one even clicked on the link.
So the GPT generated one had a better success.
It was a lot better.
That's incredible.
So that's one of the big risks that's coming in. And I think maybe handing it back to Mark, there's sort of a mitigation for this already.
There is, because phishing is obviously still a thing. Even if you don't think about AI just makes it much worse, or much easier. Anyone can use ChatGPT to create this now. So the barrier of entry is also much lower. Anyone can just do this. Don't, but you can. And that's why I think passwordless is going to be much more important these days, because the thing is, what they want is your password, right? They want to get access to your account, and if you provide that, not knowing it's phishing, they have your account. And of course, there are a lot of mitigations, like we just talked about with these step-up authentications. Hey, if someone is accessing it from a different device, maybe that's not you. But that's all after the fact, and then your password has already been leaked. And well, it kind of sounds obvious. If you don't have a password, well, you can't get
exactly.
Can't steal a password if there's no password.
That's one thing. But of course, you can still make someone log in, and then they still can get your session. So that's still a thing. But passwordless also mitigates that. Phishing is almost impossible, and that's because, as I just stated, with the creation of that payload with the public key cryptography, the domain is taken into account as well. So usually, or actually always, when you go to a phishing site, it's not the actual site. It's the same as if you use a password manager. You save your passwords according to the domain. And then if your password manager is not showing up, that should also already be a hint. So that's actually built into passwordless, into the protocol. So it can actually never provide even your public key, the signed payload, to the fake server, because it's not the same domain. So I think these are things that will really help mitigate at least the risk that AI is creating or worsening, I would say, because it's already a thing. Has been
absolutely. Even more reasons to propagate passwordless then.
Exactly.
Maybe also because we've already covered quite a lot of ground. Something that I think is important to add here, and maybe you want to add things to that, but there is always this risk of your client accounts being compromised, and then they're panicking and they want to contact you. I think we've seen this to be a somewhat, let's say, overlooked area. I call it the fallout queue of accounts. There's something wrong and people want to contact me. Well, if there's something wrong with your Twitter or X account, good luck contacting someone. I think that's the same with all the big socials. But we are getting better solutions there as well, right? We can more or less authenticate our clients in a strong way using more and more, let's say, government or semi-officially issued ways of logging in. How do you, or what's your point of view on, for example, if people really want to do a full password reset or claim back their accounts to force them through something like IDIN or DGD or It's Me, things like that? Is that becoming something that customers understand from your point of view?
Understand, maybe not so yet, but that's the thing, right? We need to start making people aware of these things, just like we had to do with one-time passwords. But I do think this is going to be more common, and it's going to help automate a lot of these things, especially in these bigger companies. And that's also one of the drawbacks of passwords. There is no password reset. There's no password.
You need a real strong alternative to authenticate.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can always say, well, then reset my account, and you get something in your mailbox, and then you can do it. But that's also not always safe. And so I do think there's a future where we can say, okay, well, let's log in with your government, like your DigiD here in the Netherlands, where we know, okay, if you authenticate with that platform, we actually know that it is you. that you are saying who you are. And we also see more countries adopting these kinds of mechanisms. They're becoming more mature, more easy to integrate as well, because I assume they're also leveraging more on the protocols that we use every day. So yeah, I definitely think that is something we need to look out to at least mitigate some of these accounts being compromised, and getting the rights back to your own account.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's a good wrap up of the risks section and how you should mitigate risks in this threatening age of AI with its promises and its risks.
I think so, yes.
Can we summarize a bit? Maybe you can put the summary slide on it, because of course we can summarize a bit. Prepared for that. Dan, do you want to take some of the summaries? What should we really do right now already? What should our clients already do?
Yeah, so I think right now it's important to be aware of what is possible in the CIAM landscape, but also of the added risks that are coming because of AI, and might lead to more compromised accounts. So it's important to be aware of that, but also maybe have some awareness campaigns at time. Next to that, of course, it's also important to get your CIAM solution ready. Try to migrate if you're still on older legacy stuff. Start migrating now to a mature CIAM setup that is stateless, that is leveraging OpenID Connect, that is using fine-grade authorization on your APIs, because those agents, the AI agents, they're coming. Your customers are going to demand them of you, I think, because ChatGPT and all those LLMs, their popularity is not dying. So this is coming to everyone. So best be ready for when it comes. And finally, if you're on one of those solutions already, or if you're going to those solutions, also make sure to turn on the passwordless toggle, so that your consumers can start using it, the ones that want to, and the others at least get to know it, get in touch with it, and we all help with basically the awareness around passwordless and trying to normalize that as the next way of logging in, because I also do think that will be the primary way of logging in 5 to 10 years.
And I think just the general awareness in your company, it's really important to keep people on their toes about the things that can compromise their accounts. Phishing has always been a thing, but it's just so much more targeted, as Dan explained. So people will, if they don't know, they will fall into that trap. So creating just already an awareness within your company of that these things happen will make them, will protect them at least a bit more.
Yeah, not just in your company. If you're actually a company that has a customer base, but you do sensitive things, you do finances, you do other things like maybe medical things. It's also important to somehow make your customers aware that these risks exist. I'm not entirely sure how the best way to do that, but it's important that you think about that as well and try to do something there. It's not just your employees, it's also your customers, because they're also at risk.
So if you're one of the, let's say, digital product managers at one of IO's clients, and there are several of those, you should maybe also contact your IT department or your company sponsors to say, well, we should maybe have a look at our CIAM landscape, renew some things, move into the somewhat more high-end solutions to do things right, because this will, all of this, yes, it sounds easy, but it takes quite some setup and a good product as a foundation, right? Right. Cool. I think we've covered a lot of topics, so we're definitely happy to take some questions. So if there are people in the audience watching who have questions, just put them in the chat. We can have a look at that. And maybe while we wait for people to chat, I had one final thing to briefly discuss with you. We do a lot of system integration at IO because big digital platforms, big marketing platforms, they all need a lot of data. So there's a lot of integration there. And that's why we also talk to our clients quite a bit about integration. Over the last few years, I've been telling and discussing with our clients, there are 3 things that you have to consider in a proper API landscape. You need a modern REST API for the CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. You might want to consider a GraphQL API if you just want your clients a bit of flexibility on what they can select. And you want to push events in a somewhat more fine-grained integration, maybe with brokers or other intermediaries. That's often done through webhooks. Should we now say that you also should consider adding MCP with proper CIAM and authentication as a support lag in this setup?
Yeah, I think so, because it does require some dedicated knowledge about it. As we just said, it's very new, very recent, and I think we still need to learn a lot on how to properly make these. Just like we needed to figure out how to properly make proper API specifications for our API so that our partners can integrate with it. Well, the same will happen here, I think, where these AI models will tend to understand these MCP specifications in a specific way. And I think we better be prepared for that and already do our research on how to do that in the best way with best practices, just like we have with those other 3 pillars.
Yeah, I believe in things like MCP, or I'm not saying it's going to be MCP in the future. Maybe something else will pop up, but at least in these protocols that enable you to feed specific data to LLMs and allow agents to do things for you. Because ChatGPT is not dropping off, but Google searches, for example, are.
We really see it in the figures now, right?
Everyone knows how to. I think it dropped below 90% of market share for the first time in a long time this month. And I believe I heard that somewhere. It may not be true, but I think I heard that somewhere. But the search numbers are dropping in Google because people just find it easier to be able to type something to a chatbot in sort of a question way. You don't have to think too much about doing all these search terms. You get some answer. If it's not what you want, you say, this is not actually what I want. I mean more this, and it keeps the context and it makes it easier. And I think if that's happening for something like searches, like why wouldn't this happen for things that you would typically do in a customer portal? Like if I want to transfer money, why would I want to go through like 5 UIs if I can type to something, can you please transfer this amount of money to Friso? And then it's done.
Then it's done, because
I think
AI
it will,
and protocols and proper token handling. Cool, thanks. Let's have a look at the questions. I have them here on my laptop. There's a first question here. You mentioned that it's not safe to give your credentials directly to an AI agent, but those agents are often from big tech companies that already have a lot of your core accounts. Is it still a problem? Yes. Should I just not care because Google has all my passwords anyway? Mark.
No, never give your credentials to anyone.
But Google is managing them for me in my browser.
That's true. But even if the model behind it is of Google, it doesn't mean that Google implemented it. Right? So these models are used by everyone, and they can have malicious attempt behind it and can use those credentials to log it, store it somewhere, misuse it. So just like Dan said, I don't really believe in the way that OpenAI is going with giving the credentials through that sandbox. I think that it's just too much of a black box in that sense that you can safely say, okay, those credentials will not go anywhere. Right. So that's my standpoint at least. Just never give those to a chatbot. Never.
Okay. So you should just expect them all to implement proper ways of handling tokens, and that's the way going forward.
100%.
Yeah. Another question. That's actually quite interesting. How do 2FA and passwordless compare to each other when talking about safety for the user? There is a bit of overlap there, right?
There is because 2FA in theory is a passwordless way of authenticating. Because you're not using a password. So in that sense, I think some of the 2FA methods can be as safe as passwordless. Thinking about the Microsoft Authenticator, it might very well be already FIDO2 based. I'm not sure, but
I think so. I think it's the same protocol.
So if you have, like, for example, the Microsoft Authenticator, that's actually the same protocol as passwordless, and if you already have that and you go passwordless, you probably just no longer use password logging in and only do the authenticator.
Yeah.
But there are also two-factor authentication methods where you get these, they're a bit older, but you get these magic links in your email. You get a code like sent somewhere. Like those are less safe because you could intercept that traffic. Or if it's going through email, if your email is compromised, then of course it means nothing anymore. Yep. So those are less safe. So it depends on the specific two-factor authentication method that is being used. What you see nowadays is most users like these Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator types of things that basically send you something to the phone. To your phone, you click OK, you copy a code or whatever. Then you log in. Those are the same level of safety as passwordless because it's basically a passwordless authentication as your second factor.
Except if you're talking about one-time passwords, because you have to type them over, you type them into something. If that's still a phishing site, they also have your one-time password. So in that sense, things like getting a notification on your phone and approving there on another device is safer than typing over those.
But in exact answer of this question, proper passwordless with a capital P and based on the right protocol is safer than just 2FA in general when done not so well.
When done not so well, yes. Yeah. So it's safer than anything via email, anything via SMS, like any one-time password type codes. It's safer than all of that. Yeah. It's the same level of safety as Microsoft Authenticator.
Yeah. But that's just strongest we can currently force on normal users, right? So,
exactly.
Cool. I see. So, there are some more questions. If you implement AI to predict customer behavior, how can you make sure this stays within AVG? Yeah,
that's a very good question.
Boundaries. Yes, we are profiling people here. Yeah. Or at least our big friendly cloud CIAM solutions are in a way profiling.
Their data is in the United States. No, I'm kidding. That's a good question. Actually, I haven't really thought about that much. I think that is also one of the things that the big players are working on.
Yeah, but I think important here, and especially nowadays with the current let's say international situation, knowing where data is processed and where this is located is quite important. So I think we are not per definition accepting anymore from big players like Okta or AWS that they just say, well, it's somewhere in the world and it might all be in the US where we are profiling citizens for this. So I think it's important to look at data locality, right? I know that it's a really big problem, it's a big topic, not a big problem for cloud providers like AWS that they have this new upcoming sovereign regions. So for example, the European sovereign region from AWS is going to be fully managed from Europe with European code repositories, etc. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it's better than what it used to be, at least, where all of these clouds are kind of like hybrid. Yes, they are in a Frankfurt region, but management is American. This is becoming better. So that might help. And probably in the small print of your website, you are going to add the fact that you're in a way doing something with login data profiling.
You have to, right? And you have to, of course, adhere to the right to be forgotten and all that sort of stuff. But I think, that won't change. But I don't know the rules enough to say if it is allowed with just that disclaimer or not. That's something that will, time will tell, I think.
Cool. Thanks. There are no more questions, but there is an interesting remark from Valentijn Scholte. That's one of IO's security architects, who is, of course, also involved in these types of topics. And he says that there's an kind of like unofficial, official maturity model for customer authentication. That's on the website from Daniel Meisler. We know about it, but it might be good to share this link after the webinar as well. It's kind of like an energy label for the strength of your customer authentication. That's useful. At least it's useful for us as IO when we are taking the right considerations on what type of security is important for this platform. At least we can do some well-founded solutionizing around it. I think that's key there. I see some last people typing. Let's just wait if there's something coming from them, and otherwise we can wrap it up because we've actually been talking for almost an hour already. It's such an interesting topic, especially combined with AI.
That's a thank you.
That's a thank you. Well,
thank you for attending.
Thank you. I think that's probably it then. we're definitely open for any discussions with any of you on these topics. So let us know via the contact methods that are available. Make sure that they're secure. And have a nice day.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.